GT America, powered by AWS, is racing towards the halfway mark of the series with a pair of races this weekend here at Circuit of the Americas. 3 classes of cars, SRO 3, GT2, and GT4 are here on site, and the mixed class nature of this championship consistently produces some of the most competitive races in SRO America. The Texas heat has been turned up, and soon too will be the action, with a pair of 40-minute sprint races starting with race number 1 in a matter of minutes. Looking live here at Circuit of the Americas, just 11 miles outside of the state capital of Texas. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish is alongside. Amanda Busick is down in the pit lane for us as we get ready to go racing for the first time this weekend for GT America, powered by AWS. Fun stories sprinkled throughout this field on a hot Texas day, Calvin, and certainly one of the stories will be the weather.
Yeah, extremely hot here. Compared to how they qualified this morning, about 20 degrees more ambient temperature. Track temps are screaming up here, so going to put a lot of energy into these tires here, even though it's a 40-minute sprint race. Pair of Audis on the front row. Johnny O in the thick of championship charge here, sits in second place right now, 4 points behind Jason Dasclos, but the top 6 on the grid separated by 1/4 of a second. This is going to be a barn burner here this afternoon.
It's been remarkably tight this weekend. That's been the case all season. Let's look at the starting grid. Johnny O'Connell on the overall pole next to James Safrone. It's good to have James back. A pair of Audis, like Cal said, starting up front. Then it's Justin Rothberg. He's already raced today, as has Ross Schwest in Fanatec GT. They start 3rd and 4th. Back in row 3, George Kurtz has some work to do. He starts next to Jason Dasclos, who dominated the early part of the schedule in SRO 3. Row number 4 belongs to Kyle Washington and Jason Bell, starting in the 8th spots. Then we get to Mark Austin, who's here in the SRO 3 category. John Roberts making his debut with the Fast Track Racing team, and Tim Savage starts out back 11th overall. Alan Grossberg is in the lone GT2 entry here this weekend. He'll start at 12th. Isaac Sherman back on pole. He's the points leader in GT4. He's perfect on the season. Gray Newell starts 2nd. Kurt Swearingen starts 3rd next to Nick Shanny. Good qualifying effort for Nick earlier today. And Todd Perriott and Farhan Siddiqui starting out back in the 9th row of the grid. As we talked about, it's mixed class racing. Calvin, that's been a big part of the storyline over the past couple of rounds, with the leaders interacting with that lap traffic. Both classes affected in terms of the fight for the win.
Yeah, and that even happened in qualifying this morning. Spoke to George Kurtz. He had a good lap going, came across a GT4 car, and I think that's why we see him on row 3 of the grid. He missed a couple of rounds of the championship, so he's been on the back foot, but he came back at Sebring, swept that weekend, and that's what he needs to continue to do. So look for a very aggressive George Kurtz here during the first phases of this race, starting P5.
And he needs to be aggressive, and he knows it. He missed the 2 races at Long Beach due to a family emergency, and that's put him on the back foot in the championship. He came into the weekend at Sebring saying, I can't just get podiums anymore if I want to win the title. I need to win races. That's what he did at Sebring, but he's got some work to do coming from the 5th spot on the starting grid here today. Field in good alignment with the veteran Johnny O'Connell on the Rover pole position. He'll have James Safronis starting alongside as the field comes around turn number 20 into the VP acceleration zone. They pass the checkered flag station on the left, but just a little bit further along, that's where the green flag is waved. Here comes the field in good alignment into that VP acceleration zone. The pole sitter, a couple steps on it. Our Amanda Busick waves the green flag, and we're racing up the hill into turn number 1. Rothberg with the big move in the early going. He's going for the lead from 3rd on the grid. Side by side at the front of the field, Safronis goes wide, but he's able to bring it back on track. And now we jump back to the GT4 start with Isaac Sherman leading the way. He's the points leader, and he's been the dominant performer this season. Johnny O'Connell holds the lead. Safronis 2nd. Dasclos has jumped up into the 3rd spot. Great job by him from 6th on the grid. Not a great start, though, for George Kurtz. He's dropped a position.
Yeah, not ideal for George Kurtz and for Rothberg. I thought he was going to take the lead, and now he finds himself tumbling down the order a little bit. Johnny O got in there a little bit deep. He may have gotten into the ABS. Looked like the front end washed out on him. Looked like Rothberg was going to tuck it to the inside, but Johnny got the power down and now accelerated him off of turn 2. And there's still the 2 Audis up front from their qualifying positions.
And Safronis is looking aggressive. His young son Jensen is here on site, and he's been prodding his dad to go faster, win some races here this year. He might be one we'll see in this paddock before too much longer. His own driving career burgeoning, but right now the old man doing a really nice job challenging for the lead in the run down into this braking zone. In the background, Rothberg looking inside, looking outside on Daskalos, but up front it's Safronis grabbing the lead from Johnny O'Connell.
Great little duel up front. Daskalos, he had to make some moves. That's the championship leader. He's come from row 3 all the way up to P3 on the opening lap of this race. Rothberg trying to recover a little bit after that great start. Couldn't quite capitalize on that move into turn 1. He sits there in P4 in that black and blue Turner Motorsports BMW.
Oh, but how about this jump from Jason Daskalos? Started 6th, runs 3rd, and he's got designs on grabbing 2nd before the end of lap number 1. That's the black and red Mercedes-Benz that runs in the 3rd spot, putting the pressure on the pole sitter O'Connell here in the early stages. Looking to the inside into turn 20.
And this is important for the championship. They run 1-2 in the championship, and now Daskalos, the championship leader, has got ahead of Johnny O.
Unbelievable. From 6th to 2nd in just 1 lap. Safronis has the lead from 2nd on the grid. Daskalos, though, up into that 2nd position now. Rothberg looking like he's ready to pounce on perhaps an ailing Johnny O'Connell.
Yeah, we saw this before at Sebring, actually, where Johnny O's car comes to life a little bit later, deeper into the stint. So maybe it's just a question of what they start their tire pressures are, and maybe Johnny O's car takes a little bit longer. There you see him really straight lining there through the high-speed S's. It's about 140 miles an hour here with these SRO 3 cars. Tremendous downforce. You can really fire it through these high-speed S's.
George Kurtz in the crowd strike by Riley entry did get back to 5th after 1 lap, and right now he looks like he wants to put some pressure on Rothberg. Those two had a battle back in the Fanatec GT race earlier today, so they know each other well. In the meantime, Gray Newell has dropped down to 3rd in GT4. That's because Kurt Swearingen has driven the ACI Motorsports Porsche to 2nd. He's now hounding the race leader Isaac Sherman. And in the meantime, Newell comes under pressure because Todd Perriott looks awfully strong.
He does. He's having an excellent run here. So from Newell from the front row all the way back now, trying to fend off a fellow Aston Martin Racing Vantage there. This is the battle for P3 we're looking at. Swearingen is keeping Sherman honest up front for the GT4 lead.
Perriott's best result of the season, a brace of 5ths, 4 of them in fact, and he's challenging potentially for a class podium, albeit in the very early stages of race number 1 here at Circuit of the Americas. Here comes George Kurtz on the attack. He has dropped the pursuing Kyle Washington, so he doesn't have to think about playing defense. Right now, full focus out the windscreen and trying to reel in the BMW of Rothberg.
Yeah, and the problem with these GT3 cars, you kind of get a little bit of an aero wash off the big BMW in front of you, so sometimes it's hard to maintain that apex speed through some of these fast-flowing corners. This battle continues here between Perriott and Newell. This is through the stadium section, coming in that really tight left-hander. Really low minimum speed through here, about 40 miles an hour. He runs a little bit wide. Shanny's right there as well, aboard the BMW.
Shanny runs 5th in that BMW Karis Kallis race team, the entrant. But the battle is between the 2 Aston Martins, Heart of Racing's Gray Newell. That's the leading Aston, with Todd Perriott not too far behind, flying the colors for Flying Lizard.
Newell trying to settle back in. He's had a solid start to the year, 5 podiums, but he's yet to see victory lane. Sherman is batting 1,000% right now, so he's incredible right now.
Perriott with a decent run. Newell will not guard the inside in this run up into turn number 1. How will this end? Perriott won't carry it too deep onto the brakes. Newell gives him plenty of room, and the two coexist nicely. That might leave them vulnerable to Nick Shanny, however. Nick looking pretty strong here in the early going.
Little twitch there from Perriott as he dove down the hill there through turn 2. High-speed S's here. A lot of these corners mimic some of the classic Grand Prix circuits around the world. This is kind of the Silverstone, Maggots, Beckett's Chapel sequence right there.
Great flow to this section of the racetrack. This is the fight for 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the GT4 ranks. Meanwhile, up front, James Safronis showing the way. He's got the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. And with an update on Safronis, let's go to Amanda Busick.
Hey, Ryan, and yeah, you'll go back to last year. Remember, it was James Safronis that was waving the green flag at the start of that Fanatec GT race, but I talked to him ahead of this race specifically, and he said that he was expecting more performance out of that Audi. He wasn't able to really use much of the curbing during qualifying. Said he wanted to protect his race car. Said I'd have to take advantage of it during the race and just hope that there's no damage, but there's been challenges with the Audi around this course with the curbing. And then talking with Johnny O'Connell ahead of the race, he was telling me that there are 5 different drivers that can win this race here today. I think we have some of the best competition in all of the SRO paddock. And he said, and then there's the kid coming after me. And we all know he means Justin Rothberg after that incredible highlight at Sebring.
It was a great fight between the two of them at Sebring, but here Rothberg's on the back foot because George Kurtz just put the move on to get up into the 4th position. And now Rothberg is falling back into the clutches of Kyle Washington as we look at Race Vision powered by AWS, our circuit performance. Opening sector, it's all about the 29 BMW. Second sector, it's about this Audi you're looking at right here with Johnny O'Connell. And then Jason Daskelo's quickest in the 3rd and final sector here at Circuit of the Americas. He also owns the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race and sits less than 1 second behind the leader, Safronis.
I love to see that because every brand, every manufacturer has its pros and cons, and we can see that the BMW's been really strong here up the front straightaway, climbing that hill, that big incline into turn 1. That's where the power really demonstrated itself through sector 1. We're seeing that through all the races here so far this weekend, but then the Audi certainly really strong in the tighter handling stuff. But right now, Safronis is going to start to feel the heat. Jason Daskelos, he's got the lead over O'Connell, which is important from the championship position, but he'd love maximum points here today.
But he's answered back. Daskelos reeled him in on that last lap. Safronis goes purple in Sector 1, sets a personal best in Sector 2 to give himself just a little bit of breathing room. George Kurtz, though, is flying. He's got the best middle sector, just set that the last time through, and in doing so, he has caught Johnny O'Connell in the Audi.
Yeah, and Johnny O really feels that this circuit owes them one. They won on the road here last year, but had an infraction in terms of when they changed tires right before the off there, and they really felt they deserved that win, didn't get it, so he's really itching to get back into victory lane here. He knows the championship is going to be tight all season long, but again, not the most solid start. We've seen it again this year, kind of a behavior with that car. It comes alive a little bit later. Johnny O's certainly hoping for that, but before he gets there, he's got to make sure that he doesn't allow George Kurtz around him.
George has the advantage, perhaps, of some track knowledge, having been on track earlier today in Fanatec GT, had a podium run alongside Colin Brown in a very similar chassis, of course, from this CrowdStrike by Riley team, and he's looking aggressive here. Goes to the inside in turn 1, late on the brakes. He'll have the inside here for the next sequence of corners as O'Connell tries to fight back to the outside. The two leading on each other, entering the S's.
This is awesome stuff. It's going to get really tight right there. George is going to have to use a little bit of that curbing. He does so. That was beautifully judged. Just classy racing between these two veterans. Johnny has got a few more years experience than George does, but I'll call George a veteran in this category right now.
Now this is what we are talking about. There's a fire under George Kurtz after missing those 2 GT America races at Long Beach. He knows exactly what he needs to do to try and recover from those lost points and try and get back in the championship picture. And step number 1 is to try and reel down this battle, because Jason Daskelos is the guy who took control of the championship early with strong runs at Sonoma as well as at Long Beach.
I tell you what, George Kurtz will clip off that little bit of video. That's a great memory to know that you go side by side with Johnny O'Connell at high speed through the S's and pull off a move. That was brilliant racing there, but as you said, Daskelos keeping the heat on Safronis, trading fast sector for fast sector right now. Both cars are performing really well, very equally matched.
But Kurtz is the fastest on the track. He just set the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race the last time around, running a 2:07.2. That's over half a second quicker than the top 2. He only has 3.8 seconds to overcome. I think there's a very good chance he will be there before too much longer, which gives Daskalos that little bit of urgency to get this pass made.
It really does. I mean, George Kurtz is kind of the dark horse in this championship. As you talked about, had to miss a couple of rounds of the championship, came back strong at Sebring. He knows he's got to basically win out if he's going to try and catch these guys before the end of the championship season. He's got a great drive going here today. Didn't have the best start. Qualified on the third row after encountering traffic this morning, but now he's on the big charge.
Without a doubt. He has yet to finish off the podium this season in GT America competition. Third place in both races at Sonoma to start the season. As we chronicled, did not race at Long Beach, but backed it up with a pair of wins at Sebring, both of which came from pole, and he had the fastest race lap in one of them too. That's to give you some idea of just how strong George Kurtz has been as of late. And look at this, he is dropping Johnny O'Connell, which leaves us with this battle here between Rothberg in the BMW and the quickly closing Kyle Washington, two drivers that also took part in the Fanatec GT race earlier today.
Washington is really coming on leaps and bounds over the course of the last 12 months. Really found a lot of pace. I think Thomas Sargent, co-driving with him in Fanatec GT, is really urging him and pushing him to go a little bit quicker, become more consistent, and it's really showcasing itself in race results right now.
That's for sure. Great to see that development. That's what GT America is all about, getting more track time, more experience, and the chance to go head-to-head against drivers that are FIA bronze graded, like Johnny O'Connell, but he's not your run-of-the-mill bronze now, is he, with all the experience that he brings to the table, race wins at every conceivable important sports car race around the world.
So Sofronis gapped Daskalos by a tenth of a second through Sector 1, but then Daskalos came back with a 6/10 advantage through Sector 2. So that AMG Mercedes is really hooked up here.
Sofronis, of course, a multi-time champion in this paddock. 4 titles in total. But it has been a few years. He also hasn't run full seasons in a number of years. But certainly still quick, and that GMG team knows how to prepare a strong race car. Getting a report, by the way, Raj Schwest has dropped down the order after getting a decent start here in this race. We'll try and follow up on what might have caused that problem. In the meantime, we'll take a peek here at this GT4 battle. Gray Newell has disposed of the pressure Todd Perriott was applying earlier in the race, and that leaves us now with a fight for 4th and 5th, with Nick Shanny starting to reel in Perriott, and these two raced each other pretty close at Sebring, if memory serves.
Yeah, they were tied at the hip for both days there, but Gray Newell had a dodgy start, took a while to get into his rhythm, but now he's putting together some very impressive race laps here, trying to chase down the lead duo, the two Porsches of Sherman and Swearingen.
Shanny gets that move made. He's up now into the 4th spot, but if Sebring is any indication, just because the position is changed doesn't mean it's going to be changed for long. We saw these two swapping positions back and forth consistently throughout both races there. Just off the podium here in the GT4 class.
Both these drivers don't have a ton of experience. Certainly Nick Shanny has come a long ways over the last 3 seasons under the tutelage of Terry Borchella, who he shares a car with in Pirelli GT4. Another one of the drivers in this field who's going to be pulling double duty here today with a big 3-hour enduro here later in the afternoon.
Shanny with career best 4th place finishes in both races at Sebring a couple of weeks back. Finished 7th in the championship last year, finished 3rd in Pirelli GT4 America in the AM class with a race win, 4 podiums, and a couple fastest race laps. Of course, racing alongside Terry Borcheller. And again, a dual program for Nick Shanny here in 2024, getting as much seat time as possible with an eye on gaining experience in a short amount of time. No shortage of experience here. Jason Daskalos, he's been around this game for a long time. He's been a consistent championship contender in GT America since the series inception, looking for that first title. And of course, James Sofronis, who's been around the game for a very long time with those 4 titles I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and James Safrona's looking over his shoulder at Daskal, who's right behind him. Had a nice conversation with him here yesterday. Very proud of his young son, Jensen, only 13 years old. Put him, I think it was in a Carrera Cup car at Thermal last week, and he went and showcased to the old man that I've got some speed. He's only about 1.5 seconds off. He was showing the video to his wife, Nagas, and she said, well, you're going really quick, honey. He said, that's not me, that's the boy.
I talked to him briefly. I got to meet Jensen earlier in the weekend as we look at Alan Grossberg here in the lone GT2 car entered this weekend. And Jensen, I asked him what his goals were, and he said, well, the main goal is to be an IndyCar driver, but my fallback plan is GTP.
I love it. Why not?
James immediately chimed in with, well, we're just getting started here, so we'll see where it goes. But, you know, why not shoot for the stars, right? And if he's got any of the old man's talent, he might be in for that kind of a career.
Wait for Johnny O'Connell's car to come alive. It certainly hasn't showcased that just yet. We've seen it throughout the course of the early season races where the Audi comes into its own about halfway through the race, and we're getting towards that mark right now. But looking at his lap times, his best lap is still 1 second off George Kurtz, who has the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race so far at 207.241. And there you can see the gap between the two cars for the final podium position at this stage of the race.
Kurtz making some inroads on the front two, down to 3.2 seconds. The gap to Daskalo's 3.4 to Safronis, but that has stabilized somewhat.
Yeah, it looks like Daskalos has dropped back a little bit here from Safronis on this lap anyway. It's about 7/10 across the stripe last time by, but it looks like on this lap he's lost a little bit of ground, maybe another 2 or 3 tenths. We'll see what it is as they cross the stripe this time through. Yeah, 1.3 seconds now the gap, so that really takes the pressure off James Safronis. He can just continue to hit his marks, not have to think about defending into any of these break zones.
Race Vision powered by AWS, giving you an idea of the average speed around one lap at Circuit of the Americas in a GT3 spec car, just 5 miles an hour or thereabouts shy of averaging 100 miles per hour around this place. And there were some slow corners, some tight corners on this track, so that puts into perspective then just how fast the high-speed stuff must be if the average can still clock in at nearly 95 miles per hour.
Yeah, I mean, you got 4 or 5 corners around this circuit where you're down to about 40 miles an hour apex speed through the tight stuff, so you make up a lot down the long straightaway, which is about 1 kilometer in length, but nonetheless, really impressive average speed around this lap, just under 3.5 miles with the 20 turns.
Just as we said, Daskalos might be dropping back a little bit. It looks to my eye like he might be closing in again, although what we might be looking at is the difference in performance in different parts of the track with these two different brands, right? You're talking about an Audi with the rear engine configuration and the front engine configuration in the Mercedes. They're going to have strengths in certain areas that might be different than one another, and likewise weaknesses in certain areas. But that's what makes this type of racing so compelling. We mentioned earlier that Ross Schwest had dropped down. He now runs 10th. Here's a look at the Schwest Povolato racing car. I think Amanda might be able to shed some light on what transpired.
Yeah, I was just talking with Amir at Schwest Povolato Racing. He actually had a spin on track as he was battling it out with another car. But we mentioned this earlier in the Fanatec GT race. Ross is really trying to retrain his muscle memory on the transition from a GT4 to GT3. Calvin, I know you mentioned it's the different braking points. It's trusting the car and getting used to a different challenge and the thrill of GT3 racing.
Yeah, high downforce machine, high horsepower, so everything's beefed up. Massive rear wings on these cars compared to a GT4 car, so it really just plants the machine into the ground. But you got to be committed. So if you're into a rhythm of how you drive a GT4 car around here, it's going to be very, very different. But I think Ross Schwest is going to get it. He showed impressive pace at the opening weekend of the season at Sonoma. Actually had a victory on the road there that was taken away in post-race tech, where it's found that the car was a little bit underweight. But to me, it just showcased that he has the ability and the temperament to just get up on the wheel and not be intimidated by this.
He's been a champion at just about every level that he's participated in motorsports up to this point. He won a Lamborghini Super Trofeo LB Cup Championship in 16. He won a Ferrari Challenge Championship in 18, won a GT America GT4 Championship in 2022. and was an outstanding high school basketball player. Actually went on to play Division I basketball too. So he's got that mindset of a competitor. I do think that does translate from one sport to another.
It does. Yeah, I think that's what's so impressive when you think about Nick Shanny, who runs in our GT4 class here today. Talking to Terry Borscheller, he said Nick did no sports, as in zero. So I'm not taking an athlete from another sport, trying to get him to take that discipline into racing. Totally different mindset with that. So I think it really plays a big part in terms of Ross West being able to compete and use all of his training from another sport here in motor racing.
Battle breaking out here, Rothberg and Washington. A moment ago, Tim Savage had an interesting moment.
Yeah, just rolled there into turn 20 with a bit too much speed. So you got traction control on these cars, but that's really when you're accelerating off. That's what we call yaw, when the car's leaning through the corner like that. That will not capture that for you. They don't have like a stabilization, electronic aid to really stabilize the car. It's more just traction, power down that you can utilize.
Tim calls Naples, Florida home. Stepping into GT3 here this year after making 8 GT4 starts 1 year ago in an Aston Martin Vantage. This is the previous generation, by the way, that he is driving of the Vantage. It's not the updated, technically they don't call it an Evo, but that's basically what it is, of the Aston Martin GT3 platform.
So Fronis has stabilized that gap at the front and sitting there just over 1.5 seconds right now. His last lap was 0.4 quicker than Dascalo. So I think Dascalo's car came alive really quickly. That's why he gets up on the wheel anyway, super aggressive at the starts of these races. But it seems like the car's maybe just fallen off a little bit in terms of its tire performance, possibly. Kurtz looked like he had a ton of speed. Last lap through is 0.3 faster than Dascalo. So he's still got enough time to work with, but he's got to keep his head down if he's going to get that position for P2.
It's true, it is closing in. Pace between the top 3, though, pretty similar, all things considered, within a half a second of one another on any given lap. And one lap it might swing Sofronis' way, the other it might be Dascalo's, and the next it might be Kurtz. That's how competitive it has been. In the meantime, Kyle Washington just sizing up Justin Rothberg. Maybe at this stage, just searching for a weakness. And one thing to keep in mind, in the Vanatech GT race earlier today, we saw this Turner BMW, at least apparently, struggle late in the stint. So let's keep that in the back of our minds as we're past the halfway mark here, and perhaps some of that could transition into this much shorter GT America race. But that said, the stint length is about the same as what you saw in Vanatech GT.
Yeah, it's a good point, and certainly it's a little bit warmer now. Track temps have been screaming up throughout the course of the afternoon. It's only going to peak around 5 p.m. local time this afternoon in terms of how extreme it's going to get. But yeah, I think the key is here that we've seen from Justin Rothberg, that he's able to stay very poised when he's been under pressure so far this season.
As you could see, some of the SRO3 leaders are into the GT4 traffic. It takes a little longer here at this massive Circuit of the Americas facility, 3.5 miles long, for the traffic to come into play. And it does look like it's a bit more spread out here than it was at Sebring, where we had in race 1 that unforgettable moment of Rothberg and Johnny O'Connell splitting what was already a side-by-side battle in GT4. Both of the GT3 or SRO3 cars had at least 2 wheels in the dirt on either side of this GT4 battle. It was spectacular stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised we're seeing the gaps we are seeing in the race right now, because based on qualifying, they were so tight. So had 6 cars within 1/4 second in SRO3 and 3 cars within half a second in GT4.
Tell you what, we might have a battle for second in GT4.
Newell has really done a great job. He didn't have a good first couple of laps. Took him a while to sort of like get into his rhythm, settle in, find his groove. But since that time, he's just kept his head down, done a really great job, and is getting ever closer to Kurt Swearingen.
Something has befallen Todd Perriott. He's dropped to the bottom of the GT4 timetables. Had been running right around Nick Shanny in the 4th and 5th positions. They've been trading that spot, or those spots. And that'll make it that much easier for the SRO3 cars to come through, not having to worry about a battle, at least at this stage of the GT4 field. But that could be changing because, like you said, Calvin, Ray Newell has settled in and has started to reel in Swearingen for the second spot in class. This is the overall leader, passing the GT4 leader. Sofronis is through on Isaac Sherman, undefeated in his professional road racing career. Pretty incredible.
It really is to go 6 on the bounce, looking for 7 straight here to start the year. Really rock solid, but I tell you what, Swearingen has kept him honest here today. Swearingen has the fastest lap, only by 6/100ths of a second over Sherman so far in this race. That will give him pole position tomorrow.
Under 15 minutes to go in this race, and we got a chance now to head down to the pits and learn more from Amanda.
Yeah, you guys were wondering what was going on with Todd Perriotti. He has fallen off the order because that's because he's left the racetrack. Todd was just out here to set a lap for tomorrow's race. Todd has that 3-hour race coming up tonight for that Lone Star Enduro. And guys, based on the heat out here, I think it probably was a really good move for Todd in preparation for what might come this evening. You know, it's going to be a unique challenge for these GT4 drivers. We'll have pit stops, tire changes, fueling. It's going to be exciting.
It's a great point. First of its kind 3-hour GT4 endurance race later on this evening. Runs from 5 until 8 local time, so into, maybe we'll call it the twilight, not quite to sunset, but very, very cool. Can't wait to see that. And for Todd Perriotti, he's not in a championship battle here in GT America, so why not take the rest and prioritize the big challenge that lies ahead this evening?
Yeah, and you've got to play your part. There are only 2 driver lineups for this 3-hour race. Maximum stint time is 50 minutes. So worst case scenario is you're going to do about, I don't know, about an hour 20 amount of work here this evening, even if you're going to get out of the car as soon as you can. So a lot of work to do. And if you're coming off an intense battle here this afternoon, not a lot of time between the 2 races. So it'd be a big ask to be doing both races in this heat of the day.
Bit of a head scratcher, I have to say, for Ski Autosports and Johnny O'Connell starting on pole. Second pole of the season for Johnny O. He's yet to finish off the podium, but that streak could end here today. He runs down in 4th right now. Traffic intervening in this battle between Rothberg and Washington. It certainly made things interesting as they make their way past Ray Newell.
Yeah, it just seems like the Ski Autosport Audi has just not come alive. We anticipated a lazy start, so to speak, in terms of not having the pace, but we've seen that before this year. But right now he's just showing no signs that he's got the pace in that race car to go chase down those podium runners.
This could get interesting here as Swearingen sits to the outside. Looked like maybe if anyone was hurt by that, it was Washington, not Rothberg. That said, Washington got on the power pretty well out of turn 20, sits behind that BMW, still sizing him up, looking for a weakness, looking for a place to make the pass with 11 minutes, 30 seconds to go.
This racetrack's being so wide. Oh, a little loose there coming off turn 1 there for Washington. Had his hands cranked and tried to get to the power a little bit early to get a run on Rothberg here, but it's so inviting for these drivers when you come into these brake zones, and if a driver's taking the more traditional, theoretical, fastest line through the corner, it just opens up that inside, and it's so tempting for a driver to dive down the inside. See Washington here now offline, getting some dirt on his tires. This has cost him huge over this last half lap.
Yeah, Rothberg a little bit aggressive. Ooh. Maybe a loose diffuser there for Sofronis. It looked like it's hanging down on the left-hand side.
Yeah, some smoke big time from the back end of that Audi, so maybe the win is not in the bag right now. We've seen that happen earlier in today's Fanatec GT race. You certainly use the curbs around here, and it can unsettle that rear diffuser, and if you break a stay or the support there, it's suddenly dragging on the ground. You can see it right there.
We did hear from Amanda. James Sofronis talking about needing to go over those curbs to extract some pace back in qualifying, and maybe that's something that has had a consequence here for James Sofronis. This is 10, 12 minutes ago. We saw this a little bit earlier, stashed it away just in case. Ooh,
Something
that's
definitely
interesting.
flew right there.
Yep. And what is this doing for James Safronis behind the wheel? What does he feel with that diffuser flapping like that?
Well, it's inconsistencies. When you're going through those high-speed S's, if that's suddenly bouncing around, it's not delivering you the consistent amount of downforce that it delivers. Now, it's not a game changer. We saw Elliott Skier with the diffuser completely gone, still run lap times within 3 or 4 tenths. So it's not going to knock you off the pace by 2 or 3 seconds, but it's going to make it real edgy. You'll go into a corner, you got grip, then it suddenly releases. And that's going to be the challenge for James Safronis, particularly with Daskelos right on his tail right now.
And there's always the possibility that race control will look askance at this and think it could be a potential safety hazard. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, Safronis is under a ton of pressure. Daskelos smells blood in the water. He's heaping the pressure on through the S's.
Yeah, he knows he's got a wounded animal right in front of him right now, and he's pushing the pressure right now to try and get around Safronis.
And he also knows George Kurtz is closing in. Check this out. It's a three-way battle at the front of the field. Daskelos maybe slipping up a little bit, Safronis, but Daskelos can't find a gap to make the move. Oh, Safronis guarding the inside. Daskelos moves a little further to the inside. He will grab the lead, and not a moment too soon because George Kurtz has now arrived on the scene.
Yeah, I think that was forcing the issue for Daskelos. You could see that Safronis was wounded, and he thinks, I can't just wait until the end of this race. You never know. There could be a caution. I got to make hay. But look at this. Safronis is coming back at him down this back straightaway. Kilometer in length here. Who's going to be the bravest on the brakes? Is that downforce affecting Safronis' braking ability? He gets in deep. He gets out wide. Daskelos to the inside and takes the lead back.
Kurtz will be the next to take a shot at him, and he needs to get that move made if he's going to catch Daskelos. Finishing ahead of Daskelos is basically a requisite for Kurtz at this stage as he tries to claw back into the championship picture. Daskelos, though, back to the point. He's won 3 races so far this season. He came in with a narrow 4-point advantage in the championship. Kurtz is coming from a long way back after missing Long Beach, but he knows exactly what he needs to do. Safronis, in the meantime, fighting for all he's worth, trying to hang on to that second spot.
I think George is going to send it here. This is the brake zone for turn 20, down to the inside, controls it beautifully. I don't think James can counterattack there coming off the corner. Now Kurtz just needs to get his head down. Daskelos got to dig deep to hold on to the lead of this motor race.
7.5 minutes to go, and it's all to play for. This diffuser damage, by the way, could end up costing James Safronis, I mean, it looks like it will right now, a chance at his first overall win in this series since 2021. Now, he's not in the championship picture, not running a complete season, James Safronis, so this doesn't hurt too much from that perspective, but you know he's here to win this weekend.
Yeah, and Johnny O sits there about 4.5 seconds back, so he's certainly getting the information. Let's see if Johnny O can dig deep, find any speed in his Audi to chase down James Safronis. He'd love to finish on the podium in what has not been a great day.
Remember that podium streak I talked about? O'Connell has yet to finish off the podium here this year. And that's very much in play once again with the ailing James Safronis not too terribly far up the road, but time is starting to run out. Under 7 minutes to go. This is Johnny O'Connell in the Ski Autosports Audi starting to close in on the wounded James Safronis.
Yeah, and he took about 0.6 of a second out of that gap to Safronis in the first sector alone, so Johnny O is on the charge.
And let's see, too, what George Kurtz can do relative to Daskelos. This is the closest he has been in some time, and suddenly it becomes the battle for the lead, not just for positions on the podium.
2 Mercedes very evenly matched. Daskelos was a 10th quicker through sector 1, almost within 3,000 of a second through sector 2. That's how close they're matched, the 2 Mercedes AMG platforms.
GT2 traffic looms up the road. That's Alan Grossberg running 12th overall, but now being reeled in by the SRO 3 leader, the overall leader, Jason Daskelos. Not a great time right here to catch this traffic. There's not an easy place to dispatch him. Grossberg does move to the outside. Daskelos comes through. Grossberg will stay wide. That allows Kurtz to come through, and to my eye, that did help George Kurtz close the gap.
Just a little bit. Got a little bit awkward there. George kind of waited, was waiting for the language of the car to indicate that, yes, he was clear to slice it down to the inside.
As you can see, Race Vision powered by AWS, Jason Daskelos started 6th. He was up to 2nd by the end of the first lap, sat in waiting, not too far behind James Safronis for the better part of this race. When Safronis picked up that diffuser damage, though, Daskelos wasted no time, and he got to the lead but he's not won this race yet, not by a long shot. George Kurtz is closing in.
Looking at the clock, about 2.5 laps left to run here for the two leaders, using every inch of the road, pushing, 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 throwing these cars through those high-speed S's. Beautiful to watch here.
George came into the weekend third in points, 43 behind Daskalos. If they finish as they run, it becomes a 50-point deficit. If he's able to get the win, however, it would be a 36-point deficit. So basically a 14-point swing here in the balance if this pass can be made.
This is huge there. Daskalos using every inch of the road and a little bit more, kicking up some dust. But George Kurtz has got his head down. It seems like this car seems to run stronger than the Fanatec GT chassis. It just seems to have more of a sweet spot in it. And here comes George Kurtz, looking, probing down to the inside. Daskalos holds firm there, sticks to the regular racing line, doesn't get defensive there. But Kurtz is keeping him honest there in the rear view facing camera.
Kurtz was nearly a second quicker on the last lap. In the meantime, O'Connell is closing in steadily on Sofronis. It was 2 seconds at the line. It's not 2 seconds anymore. It's about 10 car lengths between the blue Audi of Sofronis and the charging Johnny O'Connell. But this is the battle for the lead here with under 4 minutes to go. Just a couple of laps remaining when these guys come around to pass the start-finish line, this time by, whoa, big snap there from Kurtz. That's going to cost him dearly.
Yeah, that was a big catch there, and he kind of runs it out of bounds there. You'll get 3 warnings, then you can get dinged with a post-race penalty, so he's got to be careful. But when you have a moment like that, there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to use every piece of pavement and a little bit more, but that takes the pressure off Daskalos momentarily.
It does for now. Kurtz hemorrhaged time on that lap because of that twitch, but we know he's the quicker of the two on aggregate over the past, half dozen laps or so. He certainly is set to close in, but this gives us a chance now to peek in on this battle. Third and fourth up for grabs. Sofronis hanging on for all he's worth, but that is a wounded race car.
Yeah, he's now running lap times about 3.5 seconds slower than his best of the race, so he is really just hanging on to what will be an evil handling race car right now.
And this is probably the worst part of the track for him. High-speed S's, you rely on the downforce. O'Connell gets to his flank, throws it in, and grabs the third spot away here with under 3 minutes to go. O'Connell can keep that podium streak intact as they run. He's up to the third spot.
Yeah, just good respect there from James Sofronis. He knows that Johnny O's in the championship picture and doesn't want to make it too nasty for him there. So, but it's been the last lap of the race, and it was for the win. Been a different story there. I can guarantee you that.
Now, this is something that's been shaping up for basically the entire race here. Rothberg running in the fifth spot, Washington in sixth. I think Kyle Washington is absolutely tired of reading the Ladecrete logo on the back of that BMW.
Yeah, big test here for Kyle. We're talking about his development as a driver in terms of his pace has gotten a lot better, but these race situations are the scenarios where he has to handle a little bit better. Just really subtle moves at this point. Don't take a big chunk and suddenly dive down and miss your braking point by a car length or two.
Looks like Daskalos has settled in once he got that gap, courtesy of the twitch from Kurtz 1 lap ago. George hasn't been able to make too many inroads. They should see the white flag. They will see the white flag this time by. Kurtz needs to close in if he's going to have a chance to grab this win in the waning moments.
Well, it also unsettles you as a driver if you suddenly have a moment in the race car that you haven't experienced so far in the race. You're suddenly totally confident in what the car's doing. It's right underneath you. Then you have a moment like that. It's got 1 lap to go. White flag is out. It kind of takes you off your game a little bit. So for George Kurtz, he's only got a lap to work with right now. And I think Daskalos is in great position right now.
Kurtz was quicker on the last lap, but only by 0.3 of a second. The gap is 0.8 at the line. Final lap here in race 1 of the weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Jason Daskalos looking for win number 4 on the season, but George Kurtz is reeling him in. Whoa,
well, the car's twitchy, yeah, got a little loose on him again. Just like the front end has got too much bite there, and he's just losing the rear a little bit. Lost it there through the S's. Certainly lost it in turn 19 a couple of laps ago.
Understand Ron Schwest may have had a spin on this lap. Kurtz really backing it down here. No, that is more than a spin. Look at that. Big moment for Ross Schwest. Oh, hate to see that. Daskalos has built that gap back. What a way for him to answer the questions. I mean, he had to be despondent after qualifying to line up 6th. But what a great start. He got to second after one lap. When Safronis showed weakness, he was able to pounce. And in the meantime, battle for second here in GT4 is not done, with Gray Newell closing in on Kurtz Swearingen.
Yeah, just a fantastic battle. A great drive by Gray Newell. We talked about he didn't have a great start, good first couple of 3 laps, but he's just got his head down. Really solid run, but Kurtz Swearingen, we know how feisty he can be. We've seen it earlier this year. He does not give up positions easily. He's going to try and hang on to this P2 in the class right now.
Comes in third in points, does Kurtz Swearingen, but right now he is under assault. Gray Newell, who started second, slipped back at the beginning, but is slowly but steadily closed back in, has now well and truly arrived at the doorstep in that fight for second and third in GT4. But at the front of the field, it's all Jason Daskalos. This dream season continues for Jason and the CRP Racing team. One final time through the final corner, Jason Daskalos sees the checkered flag and wins race number 1 at Circuit of the Americas. George Kurtz has fallen way, way back. In fact, he's fallen behind Johnny O'Connell. O'Connell is up to the second spot. Kurtz limping to the line. Safronis closing in, but will not get the move made. In the meantime, Drag Race Washington and Rothberg. Rothberg hangs on to finish in 5th, but a dramatic final few minutes here at COTA. Jason Daskalos wins in SRO 3. O'Connell comes home second. Kurtz heartbroken to finish just 3rd. And it's not done yet in GT4 either, where Isaac Sherman appears poised for his 7th win on the trot to start his career. Swearingen and Newell, though, still dueling here for 2nd and 3rd place.
Yeah, what a battle we've seen, and so much drama here at the end of this race. Kurtz has obviously got a wounded race car, pulls off to the side of the road immediately after crossing the stripe.
Swearingen withstood a challenge on the previous lap. Looks like he's got a buffer now over Gray Newell. Plenty of buffer for this man. Isaac Sherman, Rotech Racing. A diamond plucked out of the rough. Isaac Sherman to the line, takes the checker flag, headlights flashing. He wins for the 7th consecutive time to start the season. 2nd place in GT4 goes the way of Kurtz Swearingen, and Gray Newell completes the podium. But you have to wonder what happened to George Kurtz. He was solidly in 2nd place. We saw him drop off over the final few laps, a couple of big twitches, and then just didn't quite have the pace, and apparently coasted across the line just barely ahead of James Safronis to complete the podium.
Yeah, the car, I mean, that may just be the camera angle. The car seems to be sitting a little weird there in a straight line, so I'm not sure if he's got some kind of suspension issue, whether it's more of a driveline issue. Take a look at Schwest here as he comes through that really high-speed corner and looks to the inside. I think he was just gauging that move up ahead and had his hands turned before he really had all of the load out of the car and just loses the rear end, unfortunately, but big impact.
It was, and that Schwest Povoledo Racing team will need to go to work. It'll, I suspect, be a pretty late night for them. They've got to get that car prepped because it races in Fanatec GT as well as here in GT America, powered by AWS. My, oh my, what a finish to race number 1. And Jason Daskalos caps it off.
Everything was great other than the fact he looks in his rearview mirror and sees Johnny O. He'd have loved to have gapped Johnny O a few more positions that it was looking likely to be earlier in this race.
That's a good point. O'Connell came in 7 points back. It'll double to 14. But it could have been a whole lot more. Johnny O'Connell, for a moment there, looked like he was going to finish 4th. Didn't have the pace to challenge for a podium, but misfortune for Kurtz and Safronis both in the final few laps opened the door for O'Connell to come through. That's now back-to-back P2 finishes. And again, has finished no worse than 3rd all season long. Remarkable consistency for O'Connell. Does of course have the 1 race win that he inherited when Ross Schwest was penalized post-race in race number 2 at Sonoma. That consistency, though, paying dividends. O'Connell still very much in the hunt as he looks for the championship at the end of the season. With that, let's look at provisional race results in GT America. Race number 1, Daskalos by 9.5 seconds over O'Connell. Then it's Kurtz completing the podium in 3rd. Safronis with that diffuser damage, ruined what appeared to be a really good run and a chance for a win. Rothberg and Washington had a good duel as well here today. Then in the GT2 ranks, Alan Grossberg picks up the win by default. Isaac Sherman, Kurtz Swearingen, Gray Newell the podium in GT4. Nick Shanny had a nice run into fourth, and Farhan Siddiqui as well, able to get to the finish of the race. Ross Schwest picked up that damage. Do have to wonder about that car. That crew's been working really, really hard to come to grips with the GT3 platform as they step up to GT3 for the first time. And Todd Perriott, as we talked about, putting his focus on the 3-hour GT4 race later today. Let's hear from our winners now with Amanda.
And as we get the celebration started here over at the podium, Jason Daskalos, another win on the season. And man, from P6 to P1, you set your mindset early. What was the game plan going into this one, Jason?
Well, I actually wanted to pick up one position on the first lap, but turned out we picked up 3, which was amazing. CRP guys gave me a great car today. And Sheldon wasn't able to be here this weekend, and he's taken a trip to Greece, and he deserves it to get away. And I'm actually going to go fly out there next week and go meet him. So amazing is right. Thank you.
Congratulations, Jason. Guys, I did run over to Johnny O'Connell real quick to see if he happened to see anything that happened with George Kurtz on track. He says, I don't know what happened. So we'll continue to chase that one. We'll know by tomorrow for sure. But Alan, a win for you here in the GT2 class. But COTA, man, a 20-turn track, so many different, from the elevation to the hairpin. Where does this baby really sing here?
Well, but right between the GT3s and the GT4s, that is its slot. Super fun on the track. A little slick this afternoon with the heat, but super, super fun.
Congratulations, Alan.
Thank you so much.
You can definitely see the heat on our competitors today, guys. It is not only a battle on track against other competitors, but as individuals as well within the heat. And Isaac, I know you prepare for this place, and I got to call you out for wearing the cowboy hat earlier this week, but getting into the spirit of COTA, but 7 for 7. Now, what made COTA so enjoyable?
Oh man, COTA is an incredibly hard track. It's fast, it's technical, a lot of bumps, a lot of like different lines you need to take. But I mean, I just want to thank my sponsors, Supercuts and the team Road Tech Racing, and just all my supporters. It was an incredibly hard race. For a second, I was like, I didn't know if I could hold off Kurt back there. He was closing the gap every now and then got some traffic, got a little separation, so it was really good.
Congratulations, Ike. Ryan, what do you make of this one?
Fantastic stuff. Great race. Utter domination once more from Isaac Sherman. That's what we've seen all season long. And, well, here's a look back at the way this one played out. Johnny O'Connell started from pole. Amanda thrilled to wave the green flag for us earlier today. O'Connell coming under assault early on. Safronis around the outside. Rothberg looking really strong in the early going, too. He ultimately faded to finish in the 5th spot, but O'Connell able to hang on to the lead here in the early part of the battle. Also had a battle here with Gray Newell, Todd Perriott, giving each other plenty of racing room in the GT4 ranks. Spin early in the going for Ross Schwest. Unfortunately, that would not be the last one. Getting word that they do actually have 2 chassis, so at least the damaged chassis won't necessarily be able to press into service tomorrow unless it's ready. Change in position there. That was Daskalos going to the lead. Safronis with some diffuser damage, and he was falling back through the field at the time. That opened the door for Jason Daskalos to drive from 6th on the grid to the race win. Big victory for Jason Daskalos to extend that points lead here today. Congratulations as well to Alan Grossberg and Isaac Sherman. That's it for Race 1 for GT America, powered by AWS. Hope you join us for Race 2 tomorrow.